David says, against you and only you, God, have I sinned. David knew that he had broken the heart of God, and he broke the heart of David. Let's look at what David says in Psalm 51. He says this, he says, hide your face from my sins, Lord, and blot out all my iniquities. Create in me, Lord, a pure heart. He knows that the only way for us to have a pure heart is for the work of the Holy Spirit, for the work of God to do that in us. And then he says this, he says, renew a steadfast spirit within me. Do not cast me from your presence, Lord, or take your Holy Spirit from me. And then here's that moment of restoration, that moment where David is restored, that moment of homecoming, that moment of awakening, that moment of revival. David says, restore to me, Lord, the joy of your salvation, and grant me a willing spirit to sustain me. Let me ask you a question. Do you have people in your life that are Nathans? Do you have real friends where you can be teachable, you can be approachable, and they can come to you when they see you out of lines and say, hey bro, oh hey girl, I love you, but you're way out of line over here. Are you willing to listen to the truth? Is there a youth pastor in your life? Is there a Sunday school teacher in your life? Is there people of authority in your life? Is there a best friend who can come to you and yes, celebrate and give you a high five when there's victories, but at the same time give you holy rebuke when you have sinned? You and I need to be teachable. As a matter of fact, we learn here with David that what brings him back to that place of humility is, even in the place of influence, in the place where he is the king, he needs accountability in his life. And he's willing to learn from Nathan. When David realizes that he has broken the heart of God because Nathan tells him the truth, David is broken. I'm so glad that he allowed people like Nathan to walk in and to be not the bearer of bad news, but to be a friend. See, when you look at this moment, what you realize is that Nathan didn't come in and preach to David and point fingers at him. Nathan is saying, listen, man, I'm just a messenger, and I'm here to tell you, you have done something that's broken the heart of God, but I'm also here to tell you that I'm with you as a friend, and I'm going to be with you all the way to the end. You want to be loved by people who love God more than you. You want to be loved by people and held accountable by people that are accountable first and foremost to a higher authority. See, the humility of Nathan as a friend, the servant heart of a messenger, of a prophet, brought David back to a place of humility. All of a sudden, we have the same kind of David that we had back in the shepherd's field. A David who falls under submission to a holy God.
We all need a true friend like Nathan in our lives who will keep us accountable and are bold enough to tell us the truth.
Yeah, and sometimes being a true friend means just being willing to listen to someone when they're hurting. Take a look at this next story. Beth really needed someone to be there for her, and fortunately, she had Bethany.
I've always grown up in the Christian home. My parents always went to church, and I loved going to church. It was one of my favorite times, and I always hated to miss it because I thought it was so much fun. But around the ages of 7 to 12, I was sexually abused, and it was something that I've hid for a really long time. I didn't tell anybody for 6 years. I thought it would be best if I covered it up and act like nothing happened at all. I didn't know it then, but it was something that was really tearing apart my heart. 6 years later, I was at a church camp, and we were talking about confession and dependence on God. And that night, I felt really compelled to share. I told my leader that was there with me. She was like, I know that this has been really hard for you to share, and I'm glad you did. And she was like, I want to help you through it. So she called my parents in, and I ended up telling my parents that I had been sexually abused. Bethany knew something was wrong, and so I went over to her house, and I basically told her I just came out and said it, and we kind of just sat there in shock for a little bit. Both didn't really know what to say.
I don't know, it was just like really hard for me to hear that happened to her, and I honestly didn't know what to say. Like, I've never been through something like that. I didn't know what to do. I just hugged her and held her and just prayed over her, and it was just like extremely hard. And I just always tried to be there for her, like she had to spend the night at my house a couple of nights, willing to listen as she just speaks of her struggles and just sitting there and listening. And I think that's just like a big deal, just being willing to just always be there for her.
She would be there just to talk to me, and if I had anything to share, if I was mad at social service workers or mad at my parents or mad at myself, she was there. I could, a little bit vent to her, and she just listened to me, which is incredible to have a friend like that, just to be there to listen to you. And it just like lifted the weight, and I think that's when it hit me that God places people in my life for a reason. Like, it's never on accident. And that's how Bethany is for me, for sure.
David Nasser challenged us to be accountable to a true friend, to be humble enough to listen when they point us back in a godly direction.
But we can also be a Nathan to someone else. Are you a true friend? Do you care enough about the other people God has placed in your life that you are willing to really be there for them? To tell them the truth, even though it might hurt your relationship? To stand by them like Bethany and really listen when they're hurting?
There's a lot we've learned from King David, the good and the bad. I think what I've learned the most is even though he messed up, he kept coming back to God. Thanks for watching.